be doing at Boston College. So first I'll talk a little bit about the head coach, and then I'll talk some about the roster, and then I'll go through their schedule game by game and give you a predicted winner and loser for each game. And this will be my last prediction video because the season starts tomorrow. So head coach Bill O'Brien enters his first season as the head coach of Boston College. In his third season as a college head coach. He was the head coach at Penn State in 2012 and 2013, where he had a total record of 15-9, and he was the offensive coordinator for Nick Saban at Alabama in 2021 and 2022 during the Bryce Young times, and I'm though not very high on him as a head coach. So recruiting this year for Boston College was horrible. They have the 96th ranked recruiting class, but some good news is they do return 68% of their production, which is a lot. So starting on the offensive side of the roster at quarterback, they return their starting quarterback Thomas Castellanos. And as a passer, he's terrible. He only had 2,248 passing yards, and he only completed 57.3% of his passes. And his yards per throw average was bad too, at only 6.8. And his touchdown interception ratio was really bad too, at 15-14. Only one more touchdown pass than interceptions. But the good thing about him is he's a really good runner. He had last season 1,113 rushing yards on 215 carries and 13 rushing touchdowns, averaging 5.2 a carry. That's a whole lot of rushing yards for a quarterback. He was their leading rusher last season. So at wide receiver, they returned their top receiver, Lewis Bond, who is pretty good. He had last year at 646 and seven touchdowns on 52 catches, averaging 12.4 a catch. And they bring in two transfer wide receivers that will probably be the other two starting receivers. They bring in Gerard Bradley from Texas Tech, who has played in 22 games these past two seasons and had in that 87 catches for 1,175 yards and 10 touchdowns, averaging 13.5 a catch. And they bring in from Vanderbilt Jaden McGowan, who has in 2 years combined 80 catches for 836 and three touchdowns, averaging 10.5 a catch. So they should be solid at wide receiver. And at running back, they are good. Boston College, I think, is going to have a really good run game this year. So they return Kyle Robicox, or whatever his name is, who was their leading rusher with running backs last season. He's a pretty good running back. He had 780 yards on 163 carries and eight touchdowns in 11 games, averaging 4.8 a carry, and had 3 games of over 100 rushing yards last season. And they bring in a transfer running back from Kansas State, Trishawn Ward, who had in 11 games last year 643 yards on 124 carries and five touchdowns, averaging 5.2 a carry. And on the offensive line, I think they'll be okay, but not great. So they returned three starters, including a tackle Ozzy Tripolo, who didn't allow any sacks all year last year. He's likely going to play in the NFL. So offensively, I think Boston College will be okay, but not great. So defensively, though, I think they're not going to be very good. They're probably going to struggle again. So on the defensive line, all of their starters are back, but their defensive line was not very good last year. They ranked 118th at stopping the run, giving up 187.9 rushing yards per game and they were one of the worst teams in the country in pass rush. They do have though on the defensive line Donovan Zurikio or whatever his name is coming back who has in 2 years combined 114 tackles and 21 total pressures and 10 sacks and 3 pass breakups and 5 forced fumbles. He's a future NFL player, most likely. And at linebacker, they're not very good except for Cam Arnold, who has in 2 years combined 141 tackles and uh, 11 total pressures and 2.5 sacks and 5 pass breakups and a forced fumble and 2 interceptions. And in the secondary, they've got 2 out of 4 starters coming back. They've got one of their starting cornerbacks and one of their starting safeties back. Now, they're not great players. And they add in 2 transfer defensive backs from Ohio State. They add in at cornerback Ryan Turner and at safety Cameron Martinez, who will probably be the other 2 starters in the secondary. Now, neither one, though, has played a lot in college. So in the secondary, I think they'll be okay, but not good. On special teams, I think they'll be okay. They do return both their kicker and their punter, who did an okay job for them last season. Now moving on to the predictions. They start the year in the Labor Day game, September 2nd, on the road against Florida State. I think this will be a loss. So Boston College, I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to keep this a game for most of it. But Florida State's defense, I think, will be too much for them, and they'll end up beating Boston College by at least 2 touchdowns. And then they play Duquesne. This will be an easy win. And then they play on the road at Missouri. Missouri is going to have too much offense for Boston College to win this. They won't be able to keep it close, I don't think. Missouri's quarterback Brady Cook, I like, and Luther Burden is a top 5 wide receiver in the country, and I like the transfer running backs that they brought in, and I like their offensive line. Now, I'm not high on Missouri's defense, but Boston College's defense, I think, is worse. So I think Missouri will win this one by at least 2 touchdowns. And then they play Michigan State at home. So this is a tough one. I could see it going either way. Uh, Both teams are pretty similar. Now, I think Michigan State has a little higher ceiling than Boston College does, but they also have a new coach and a bunch of new players. It'll probably take them some time to play well. And playing at home at this point in the season, I think Boston College has enough to get a close win. And then they play Western Kentucky. This one, I wouldn't be surprised if it's pretty close. Western Kentucky's usually a pretty good team out of the group of 5, but I think Boston College has enough to get the win. Uh, and then they play on the road at Virginia, a team that could even be worse than Colorado's clown show this year. They're so bad. Boston College should be able to go on the road and get this win. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's still pretty close because Boston College, even though they're not horrible, they're not a good team. And then they take a week off and play on a Thursday night, most likely, on the road at Virginia Tech. This will be a loss, I'm pretty sure. Virginia Tech's not only a better team than Boston College, they're a really tough place to play. I don't see Boston College going on the road and winning this game. Uh, Probably won't be real close. And then they play Louisville at home. I think this will be another loss. Louisville, I think, is going to be too good. I don't think they're going to be an elite team, but they're going to be pretty good on both sides of the ball and good at the line of scrimmage. And then they play Syracuse at home after getting a week off. I had a hard time with this one. I think both teams are pretty similar, even though I think Syracuse is a little bit better. The game is at Boston College, that's why I almost picked Boston College, but I didn't because I think that Syracuse has upgraded their roster enough with the transfers that they brought in to still get a close win. And then they play on the road at SMU. I think this will be another loss. SMU, I think, is going to have a good team this year. They're going to be pretty good on both sides of the ball, but probably will be pretty close. And then they play North Carolina at home. So I do think that Boston College will get one upset win this year, and I think it will come here against North Carolina, who's been a very inconsistent team these past two seasons. Think they get a close win over North Carolina, and then they end the season against Pittsburgh at home. Pitt is so horrible that they're going to be one of the worst teams in the ACC this year, I think, and that is pretty bad. As horrible of a conference as the ACC is. So I'm going with Boston College to get this win. So my final prediction for Boston College is 6-6 overall and 3-5 in the conference. So even though I've got Boston College going to a bowl game, I don't think they're a good team. I think they're a bad team actually, and I think it's just because of the schedule that they'll get to a bowl game. If they played an SEC schedule, I think they would have no chance of going to a bowl game. So for my Heisman prediction, I agree with Vegas, and I think that Dylan Gabriel from Oregon will win the Heisman Trophy. I think that him being the top returning quarterback this year and the Heisman Trophy becoming a really a quarterback award will make him the likely Heisman winner for this season. And he's going to have the best wide receiver unit to throw the football to, and he's going to have one of the best offensive lines in the country protecting him. So some other possibilities, though, in my opinion, for the Heisman Trophy would be a Carson Beck from Georgia and Quinn Ewers from Texas and Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State and Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. Probably one of those would win it if Dylan Gabriel doesn't. But that will be it with this video, and please subscribe and thanks for watching. And I'll probably be filming a reaction video after tomorrow's game.